Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
It's the way that this film is shot is why it's special.
Jaw-dropping. The whole time watching that thing, that's 6.5 minutes long of a battle scene in one shot.
The pain of humanity not being able to reproduce is in his face. And, he drinks, he smokes, he loses his shoes.
My eyes are popping out in the middle of the scene because it's being filmed from the middle inside the car. And you couldn't get out of that car in your head. You can't leave that scene. And this is like a stressful movie to watch in that really good way, where you're just engaged and you really want everyone to survive. So, yeah, I love it. It's really, really great.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Paul.
Hello.
Wayne.
Hey there.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Children of Men.
Thank you, as always, to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello everyone, welcome to Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us remotely today we have Paul and Wayne. If you would like to say hello and tell our listeners a little bit more about who you do. Oh no, who you are.
Who do you do?
There's another whole show we do about that.
Yeah. In Wayne's case, we'll be here a long time.
Shut up. Sorry. Paul, please go ahead. But you are Paul.
Yes, I'm Paul. He is Wayne. We are an Australian podcast. We count down movie and TV reviews. But I picked this film today, Children of Men, which I'm very excited to talk about because I have a bad experience with one of your country people watching this film, and I'm here to set the record straight.
Oh, God, I remember this story. All right. Yeah, cool. Yes, I'm Wayne, everyone. I specialize in off-color humor and annoying Paul on our show.
Not in that order.
You specialise. It sounds like you get paid for that specifically, or is that just something you kind of declared on Twitter?
Oh, I definitely don't get paid for it. But what are you going to do?
Well, tell us, guys, a bit about, first of all, you said you're Australian. We are actually recording live. You guys are in Perth. Can you explain a bit about Countdown Podcast and, well, I guess it's kind of in the title, but why you started it and a bit more about it?
We started because I needed an excuse to hang out with Wayne, who's my long-term best friend, and then I'd had a baby, and so I wasn't allowed out of the house. No, not with Wayne.
Yeah, okay.
Not yet. And so that was 5.5 years ago, and we thought we might get through 5 or 10 episodes, and we've now had 285 countdowns and a whole bunch of reviews around that. So we've been around a long time. We've enjoyed it. People actually listen to us, which amazes us.
It was all a ploy to get free movies, basically.
And we get to go to free films and go to premieres of films, which is really exciting.
Oh, amazing. So how do you pick the countdowns that you do? Is it out of a hat, or is it listener generated? What's the score there?
Bit of both, really.
There are just painful conversations that happen every week where it's like, what are we going to do next? How about this one? No, that's stupid. How are we going to do that? No. And it's just back and forth. So we are basically it's basically just a kind of a comedy show that is,
no, he thinks it's a comedy show.
I think it's a comedy show.
I think it's a legitimate film review show.
Yeah, I don't think that.
And obviously we land somewhere in the middle.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of the show. I've listened quite well, and I do like a list and a countdown. So each episode
Thank you.
fulfills that, and obviously myself and Helen are big film fans, so that's all in there in one big podcast. So guys, if you're listening, do head to Countdown Film Podcast. It's really good fun. As you said, Paul, we're talking about Children of Men today, which is your choice.
Yes.
Apart from the countryman aspect, which the revenge on I guess someone from Britain, UK, London.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain why you chose it and the synopsis in a minute or less, and then tell us who you want to seek vengeance on?
Okay, so Children of Men is a dystopian sci-fi thriller set not that far in the future where the world have stopped being fertile and we have not had children. And as the film opens, the youngest person in the world dies, murdered at age 18 and a bit, And as you can imagine, the world has disintegrated into terribleness. Great Britain, the UK, has risen above this and managed to keep going. And so everyone's trying to break into Great Britain and are treated as basically criminals and put in prisons and exterminated and all the rest of it. And meanwhile, a woman falls pregnant and has to be guided to a human science project, a bunch of people who might actually be able to replicate why she's fallen pregnant. And it falls to Clive Owen as a jaded, cynical, alcoholic individual who hates the world to get her there.
So why did you choose it?
And we can't actually carry out any revenge behalf on you. So
But we might know people.
Revenge is a tad harsh, but I went with a young woman I was dating at the time to see this like 14 years ago, and I was absolutely enthralled, amazed by this film. So obviously I picked it for my like, despite the dark tones to it. Walked out of there.
Because Paul doesn't know how to date women, but go on.
And she said, well, that was a bit naff, wasn't it? And I broke up with her. So that was the end of that.
And she was a Brit, was she?
Yes. That was a bit naff.
Do you know where she was from, Paul?
I don't know exactly.
Okay, you're not going to say it though, are you?
So I thought a good opportunity to talk with some learned and appreciative film connoisseurs such as yourselves and Wayne.
I mean, there are some films which are not good date films. This will be one of them. One of our previous guests went to see the film Shame just after getting engaged.
Oh, man.
Oh.
So in spite of this breakup, Paul, you like this film. Tell us a bit more about it. What kind of drew you to it? And where did you kind of sit with Alfonso Cuarón and the rest of his films?
I love Alfonso Cuarón. I think this is the best of his films. However, I love Gravity. I think Gravity is fantastic. I like Roma for the technical aspects of it, how beautiful Roma is and the like. The story is not so impressive for me, Roma in particular, but what he brings to the screen in his capacity to put the viewer right in the middle of what's going on with these incredibly long and complicated takes is something that I will forever appreciate. And on our show, we love a good one take, and this film has a couple of the absolute best. So that alone is enough to get me going. The subject matter after that, also fantastic. I like dark, dystopian type films.
What about yourself, though, Wayne?
Paul is constantly suckling at the penis of this movie because he's always loved it, right? And so I actually do love it. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. I actually forgot a lot about it, and I actually forgot how good the film is. Watched it again yesterday. Couldn't look away. And like you said, it's the way that this film is shot is why it's special. You do feel like one person running next to him or whatever. And just, again, the one takes are actually kind of, I didn't realize, I forgot there were so many. There's like 3, 4, 5 in there, and each of them is eye-popping. So I just got to respect the effort. I love it. It's really, really great. It's a little dark for my liking. I'm a little bit of a Peter Pan, little like happy shit stuff guy. But other than that, fantastic.
Where did you sit on Cuarón? Should we reel off his filmography and where he's going to go to next as a ground for listeners? So let's start. I guess we'll start with Itamama Tambien. This is probably where most people might have heard him, and then Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Children of Men, Gravity, and Roma. And then he's going to do The Witches next. He's working on The Witches next. He's not producing them, but yeah.
I was surprised how few films he'd made in sort of quite a long time span. Because he's been making films since the early 90s, and he's only really made sort of 10 films, which for someone who is that good at making films, I think he's got a couple of Spanish name ones that are on his Wikipedia as starting with. But I was really surprised that he'd made that few films. And this would have been the first film that I would have known him from, possibly.
Not even Harry Potter. I know you've not seen any Harry Potter.
I don't do Harry Potter, so that would have passed me by, that one.
Right there with you, Helen. We don't do Harry Potter either.
Yeah, I tried.
Sorry.
What happened with that? When you say you tried, Wayne? What happened?
I went to 4 because I think that was the one. I think 4 was the one.
That's trying, isn't it?
It is. I really busted ass on it, and it's. I don't know. I don't mind doing it again, but it's a kids film, and it gets to be like a adult person film. But I don't know if it just quite grabbed me. Not sure really, but yeah, not quite.
So in those few films, Helen, which are your standout Cuaróns?
So this definitely Roma. And then, the spectacle of Gravity. And then I think, what else has he done? I couldn't remember. I enjoyed that, but I haven't rewatched that one. So that's probably kind of it, isn't it? What else has he done?
Well, some great expectations with not seeing Little Princess and Solo con tu pareja. But I think all those 5 recent ones from since the turn of the century are all fantastic. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, but that's the one that does stand out in my mind.
And then he's done producer work, hasn't he, as well? So he produced Pan's Labyrinth as well. So he's
he does stuff with the other 3 amigos from Mexico City. So Wayne, sorry, your thoughts on Cuarón's ilk.
Oh, I do like his stuff. My 2 favorites from him are definitely this one and probably Gravity. I think I remember with Gravity actually like having this emotional change when I was watching it in the cinema, because it was just I was out in space and I was scared in space because I was in that film. So that's what like Paul said, he puts you right in there. He's probably as good as Ridley Scott used to be at doing that. So this is probably my favorite of his if you're talking about pure achievement.
I think this is probably one that works best on the small screen. Gravity, I don't want to watch that again on a TV. If I watch it again, it has to be on as big a screen as possible. I saw it in IMAX, and I've had friends who, after me raving about it, they were like, "Okay, yeah, we hide it on DVD." I was like, "Oh no, you're not enjoying that." And they're like, "It's nonsense, Cobra." It's like, yeah, it doesn't. The story doesn't really hang together, but in the whole enthrallment of being there and the soundscape and everything,
space flying at your face and things.
Absolutely. But I think this one works really well on the small screen. We've had Rome on here as well before, and that scored well everything else wise apart from the small screen score, because I think everyone just like we wanted to have seen that on the big screen. Cuarón, as you talked about, his how he sets up the shots, typically works with Chivo, who's won a couple of Academy Awards for cinematography, and Roma is different in that Cuarón actually directs. He did the cinematography himself, and so he just has all the skills. But this one is working with Emmanuel Lubezki, Chivo, and the shots in this are astonishing. Anyone want to take us through their favorite shot or two, the long shots that they do in this one?
For sure. I mean, there's 2, so I'll just pick one and maybe someone else can talk about the other one because I'm sure they are standouts. But for me, the one towards the end of the film where obviously we are talking spoilers, when he's trying to get Key down to the boat, which I think they're Eastern European people, they're helping them out as part of this resistance. And then they get set upon by
the
fishes, and she gets captured and taken away, and they're going to murder him and Clive Owen's character. I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Why have I drawn a blank? Theo, thank you. Yeah, they're going to murder Theo.
I was going to say Crowley. Jack Crowley. What a bad name for a kid.
And then, of course, the government comes along, or the army comes along, and a battle breaks out. And so this is all one shot. And then it follows him chasing after Key, and he sees them go into this building where they set up shop to have a sort of last stand battle with the army. And he manages to get inside despite the 2 warring factions. Still one shot, get up. It's just absolutely incredible. Get upstairs, get her away, and takes a bullet. And then the shot cuts after that. It's just jaw-dropping. The whole time I'm watching that thing, that's 6.5 minutes long of a battle scene in one shot.
How long does it take to set up again after one take? Can
you imagine being that extra who spiked the camera at the 6-minute mark?
Or the continuity. Go on.
You've got tanks going off there, you've got proper full-on explosions, and that kind of setup, if you have to happen explosions for a 10-second shot, that reset is enormous anyways. But to have that, like you say, to go 90% of the way through it and then someone spike the camera in like cut, reset, come back tomorrow.
Sorry.
That had to have been like months long filming a sequence like that, surely.
All the planning, that would have had to go
with
into
everything.
it.
Yeah, God. Yeah, amazing.
What about yourself, Helen? Do you have another one shot in there?
Well, I would have talked about that one, but it's interesting with that one because obviously the blood gets splattered onto the camera.
Yeah.
And they actually said at some point, I think Cuarón actually said cut, but they didn't hear him and they carried on rolling and they eventually used that or something. But yeah, it did take like...
That's cool. I wondered about that.
Yeah, so the blood thing isn't a planned thing, apparently, according to IMDb.
The blood disc, because I rewound that because I was like, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's quite cool, and thought it was a part of the thing. And so I rewound it to work out when the blood disappears, and it kind of disappears when it goes into the building. Like one drop kind of dissolves, and then the other one kind of, like the 3 or 4 splatters kind of slowly dissolve as you go through. Right. So that's a really cool thing.
That would have been interesting to try and edit around. That's like, what do we do here? That would have been a really cool problem to have solved like this in the editing room.
It would have been, yeah. Does that... I think that one shot cuts away. I noticed was when he sees Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, because there is still a one shot until we first see him again, and then it cuts into Chiwetel Ejiofor. And I always kind of feel like, I could have gone on a bit longer, because I don't think we needed to get a close up on him and seeing him being blown away before. He could have carried on and turned around and seen him go back out of the building. I think I could have gone for a minute or two longer.
Yeah,
what do you guys reckon?
I think it is another shot afterwards of them walking out. It's not anywhere near as complicated, but you're right. There is those inserts of Luke, and then he's coming back out, and that very powerful moment where everybody who sees the baby just stops, turns around, and is stunned, so much so that bullets are still firing from outside, and some of these extras are being killed. Not really, obviously, but characters are being killed and dropping to the floor, and no one's still moving. No one's trying to protect themselves. That's such a haunting moment in an otherwise amazing film.
And I actually forgot about that moment. So I was like, oh, wow, this is actually pretty powerful. Nice. Yeah.
I guess the other shot is the car when Julian gets killed. Wayne, do you want to set us up with that one?
Dude, so they're on the road to somewhere, and they get ambushed by the fishers, who put a flaming car in front of the path, and they have to basically kind of negotiate around it. But they are then basically set upon by the fishers, smashing them and hitting the car as they're reversing back and forth and trying to get out of there. And of course, the motorcyclist comes up. One of them is armed, and they fire at the car a couple of times, killing Julian, which I didn't expect actually when it happened. And my eyes are popping out in the middle of the scene, because, I'm like, oh, this whole thing's going. It's being filmed from the middle inside the car, and you're seeing absolutely everything, and all the cues are being hit, obviously, but just to, it came off so good, and you couldn't get out of that car in your head. You can't leave that scene. And this is like a stressful movie to watch in that really good way, like where you're just engaged and you really want everyone to survive. So yeah, that would have been, this is my second favorite shot, this one here. Possibly.
I think this is probably my favorite one, actually, because it's one of the ones at the end of it, when they go out of the car, they actually go out of the car and see it go to, like, zoom in on the police officers who Luke has shot, which is also super dark. And then I was like, hold on, have they been in the car this whole time up until this point? So then I rewound it again, and there's like, shit, that's just whole one big shot. And I love the subtlety of that. It doesn't seem flamboyant, but also it's spectacular. I think a lot of people who wouldn't notice, a lot of people who watch this casually wouldn't notice that.
Absolutely.
But I think people, yeah.
And it goes all the way back to when he and Theo and Julian are playing that game with the ping pong ball, blowing into each other's mouth, which has to be CG, I can only assume, because how did they nail that 3 times over before the shit hits the fan?
That's the thing that stuffs up the most. Imagine how many times they start. It has to be CG.
So that's awesome. And then, it's just that rotating camera, which then gets off whatever mount it's on and becomes handheld. And that's the other thing. This film is unlike, say, Gravity, where it's smooth through most of those one shots. This is very much shaky cam, almost documentary type footage, where that's putting you right there in the action in these. Almost feels like a war-torn reporter, a war correspondent in whatever nation in the battle streets, bringing you the news.
Good point. And that drab color scheme, even in like the war and everything, that's on purpose. Even the forest where they're driving in this scene is kind of muted. It's not this lovely forest. It's
Sorry, we got off. We moved on there too.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's focusing on the real side of things there, and it does. Like, I think the camera does make you a part of that. And what Helen and I talk about, I think Helen's a big fan of Julianne Moore, I was going to say, and this is where we see the end of Julianne Moore's character. Helen, do you want to talk about her and also the other cast members of note?
Yeah, so I love Julianne Moore. I can watch her in anything. And it's one of those things, when you get kind of a big name star in it, which is probably the biggest name star, having them sort of popped off like 20 minutes into the film is, quite a shock, because you're like, oh, okay, so, anyone can kind of die. It's one of these kind of films. She's the only American in this film, to note. Everyone else is English. And Clive Owen. So this was probably Clive Owen's sort of peak. We reviewed Inside Man recently, and we sort of had a little chat about sort of what kind of happened to him, because suddenly he was, maybe the next Bond, and then he hasn't really made anything other than a TV show recently. But I think he really...
He guested on an episode of Curb.
Yeah, so done a bit of TV work, not so much film stuff, but I think he's kind of the glue. He sort of holds it together with his kind of dogged boisterousness, and he's kind of like limping throughout the film because he seems to lose his shoes, and you just kind of feel all of his emotion, because obviously his sort of backstory is that he lost a child as well. So that's another theme that's running through it, which is the turning point for when he kind of realizes that it's not actually about the money and doing the mission for him. It's, you know, keeping humanity alive with this one child. And I just really like him. I like his face. He's got one of those faces that he can act really well with, and you just feel his pain and sort of the pain of humanity not being able to reproduce is in his face. And, you know, he drinks, he smokes, he loses his shoes. Michael Caine.
Michael Caine's probably the best well-known actor in that. Julianne Moore second, yeah.
Hell of a cameo, though. Really, really good, really powerful just for his 2 scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about Caine and the strawberry cough.
Well, it's great to have, because obviously the film is pretty dark. You know, there is not much hope, and he kind of brings a lot of humour and light and positivity into it. So I think it's needed, and a great wig as well. I don't think that's his real hair.
Yeah, and also in this film, there's probably one of the earliest appearances of Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yes, just after Serenity, I think.
Oh, okay. I've not seen Serenity.
Yeah, he's a bad guy in it.
And the first one I remember seeing was Dirty Pretty Things. I can't remember which was before that. And also in this film, you have Peter Mullen, and he never plays an empathetic character.
You're 100% right.
Yeah, so when I saw him, I was like, okay, well, he's a wrong'un.
Plus, he talks to him about himself in the third person, so you know he's an asshole.
But I think the cast is on point here. This is my favourite Clive Owen film. I don't really get him as an actor. I think he's good in the right situations, but I think that if he was Bond, I think it would have been a really hard to swallow Bond.
I agree.
But in this, he's exactly the right person for this role, I think. I just can't get on with his dryness of delivery typically, but this is absolutely fine.
When he sort of like wanders into the woods after Julian dies and just like crumbles next to that tree, God, I felt like just actual sadness. Like you said, it's right there. I'm like, Jesus, like stopped around for a while. So yeah.
I think you're right. There's something about him, and he has done stuff more recently, but he's sort of been relegated to being the bad guy behind the scenes in lots of things. Like he's the bad guy in Valerian and the City of 1,000, whatever shit.
Boy, that sucked.
And he's the bad guy in Gemini Man as well. So
that was the balls.
They are some terrible films, and he's trading off what used to be. But this is, I 100% agree with what you said. Peak Owen. I really buy him in this movie, and I'm really right there on the journey with him. That moment when he sort of switches from being all about the money and whatever to, oh, actually this matters, and I need to get this woman and her unborn child and eventual born child to safety. You really believe it. So full credit to him and to all the cast, because everybody's good. There's not a person in this movie who's bad.
No. When you're looking back at this, Helen, was there any in IMDb? Was there any notes about how they rehearsed this or how they did this? Because it seems that they must have been banded together for a while to get this in place and make sure everything was tied and knitted together. Well,
interestingly, because it's based on a book, Alfonso Cuarón had never read the book. And I think the script is probably written by about 5 people, and apparently Clive Owen had quite a bit of an input in it. So I don't know whether there's particularly big differences, but obviously the script came to Cuarón and he just kind of went with it. So it's quite interesting in that you would take on a book like this without having read it. So I think he sort of said that he wasn't really interested in kind of the exposition or kind of setting stuff up. He just wanted to kind of go straight in the story. And he talks a lot about how actually the end of the film is the start of it, and however you sort of take the ending, whether you see it as being sort of positive or negative, is kind of how you see the world, which is quite interesting because it doesn't give you an ending. You can choose, you know, how you want to interpret the ending like that. So there's just a lot of things going on, and obviously there's a lot of themes like religion. You've got the fishes, obviously a religious thing, and key jokes about that she's a virgin as well.
refugee crisis.
Yeah. You know, there's loads of lovely things going on. One thing that I do really enjoy is, I obviously living in London, really enjoy seeing London on screen. And, you know, apart from the fact it's not that dirty, it's pretty close, I think. Although people don't really drink Carling, just in case you're wondering, like no one drinks Carling. It's a big beer. And
it's like you guys don't drink Castlemaine 4X, do you? Or Foster's?
Foster's is the one I was going to say. You nailed it.
Foster's, yeah. And also interesting, one of the things that basically there's an animal pretty much in every scene. So Clive Owen, I think, is in every scene apart from one or something crazy. And then pretty much in every other scene there is a dog or a cat or an animal. So they've obviously managed to reproduce. So it's not a thing that's wiped out global fertility.
I've noticed that. Cool.
Still going. There's loads of like little cats and things.
There's a deer or some kind of antelope type creature in the school when he walked in. That was quite startling.
That's right.
And when you said one of the things that makes me laugh each time I watch this, which has been twice, is Helen and I we typically record this in Camden in London, and there's one line says, "I'll meet you in Camden." And I'm like, "Yeah, Camden." Camden doesn't look anything like it wasn't Camden, but it was, it's still good to mention it specifically the district of London that we record in. Before we get into scores, do you see this as a positive ending or a negative ending, guys?
Good question, go on.
Dude, okay, so only now, Helen, that you said, like, there's an ambiguous sort of ending. Don't I go, was it? Because I just assumed, and I often get this stuff wrong, but I thought he died. He died.
No, he died.
He died, definitely?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, but you're left to think, is there actually a real place which can perhaps
solve the fertility?
Propagate her? Yeah, okay. Oh, geez. You know what? I'm going to go up. I'm saying that there is actually one of those places, and she's going to have a bunch of babies.
Predictable from Wayne, but I actually think that's the way I read it too. Less so because of your interesting rationale, and more so because it chooses to go out over the end credits with sounds of children playing and the like.
Right. Now, I think that was an ironic choice. Like that. Because if he's like that music is actually kind of annoying, man. Like, well, if you it's so jaunty that it's like completely out of step on purpose with the tone of that.
But there's sounds of kids playing.
Okay. Yeah. No. I love that. I love that. Sorry. What did you guys think?
Helen, you go first.
I mean, for me, I think you have to look at it positively, and that the boat is offering hope and a new future. Otherwise, we're peak 2020 at the moment. That this film doesn't look that dystopian anymore, it kind of feels a little bit like this film when it sort of 27 years from now. London looks a little bit like that now, anyway. And things like The Handmaid's Tale, written in 1984, but it kind of all feels now. So I think you have to take the positive,
or you'll go mad.
I'm going on the positive spin, but that she at least she's saved. I'm not sure what that means for humanity with her specifically, but I like to think her and baby Froley stroke Dylan stroke the other name that she's going to come up with are at least safe, and that's why I'm going to end before we head to the scores.
If there's one TV show that is going to make the whole of the UK feel that little bit better about what's going on in the world at the moment, then it has to be the Great British Bake Off, which has returned to our screens. And if you want to really understand why the dough didn't rise or why the cookie crumbled, then you'll want to hear the Bake Down podcast, where my two co-hosts, former contestants Jane Beadle and Howard Middleton, who have been there and done it in the most famous baking tent of all, dissect each and every episode of the new 2020 series. Search the Bake Down wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll be sure to find us.
So welcome to the Flixwatcher scoring system. All of our scores are out of 5, and you may have decimal places if you wish. And we will start with you, please, Paul, with your recommendability. Well,
I would recommend this just about anyone, unless you happen to be a girl I was dating 14 years ago.
And God knows there's a ass ton of those.
just out of interest, what did you press her as to what she was so unimpressed by?
She said she was bored and it was all a bit too dark. And that's what I want to acknowledge in terms of this might not be for everyone. It is a hard-going film. It's probably not one you want to sit back and kick back after a really tough week and put on a Friday night and enjoy to lighten yourself on the way into the weekend. But otherwise, I have no hesitation to recommend it to everyone, particularly anybody who enjoys being challenged a little in their film watching. So I give it 4.5.
Jesus. Wait. Okay. Sorry. That was all right. Sorry, everyone. Yes, I'm a little more like on, because like I know Paul loves it, and I know that Paul knows smarter people than me. So I think more of those people would get this. I, on the other hand, if I'm talking to like a general population and say, here's the thing, it is a little dark and it is 2020, maybe wait until things are better, because it actually mentions a flu pandemic in this friggin' movie. So I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, you know what? It is awesome. Anyone who I think will get it is 3.5 is basically my score. So I will, yeah.
I think that's the first time we've taken the exact year and current situation, current affairs into recommendations. Right. Is that right, Helen? Yeah, we'll normally recommend it, but this time it's bleak enough. So maybe wait 3 or 4 more years before you watch it. I've never heard that before.
I'm considerate.
Should add like an extra score in a 2020 score and a non-2020 score.
Pre-2020, yeah.
Helen?
I really like this film, and I really enjoyed revisiting it. And I think it could have been made overcomplicated. I don't think you need to be particularly smart to kind of get along with basically, humanity is struggling and things are going bad, particularly in light of 2020. And I quite like this kind of film anyway. I quite like dark films. It's pretty good. But in light of your dating experience, for that one group that may not enjoy it and find it a bit boring. It's not boring. It's got like a car on fire.
Thank you.
It's got like loads of stuff happening. It's got all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to give it a 4.9.
Oh, whoa! Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, I'm going to give 4.5 here. I think it's a.
You suck.
There are big caveats, but it's an astonishing film. I think, as Paul said, I'm not going to come back at the end of a hard week and crack open a Carling and put this on. It's one of those kind of considerate choices where you kind of think, I've not seen Children of Men for a while, and then 3 months later you're like, yeah, I've still not seen him for a while. I think maybe next weekend I'll put it on. And then it's one of those kind of films, isn't it, where it just has to, the time has to be right, or someone has to nominate for the podcast you created. But yeah, a lot of people, as you said, won't. I think there will be a fair few people who don't take lightly to this, but it's a worthwhile watch. But boring, it's not. I can't see the boredom in this. Right from the start, there's an explosion, and you hear about baby Diego, was it, who gets killed. I love that conversation he has with Michael Caine's character about baby Diego being a wanker, in the car. That's hilarious. So there are some moments of levity in this as well. But yeah, 4.5. Repeat viewing score.
Look, I've seen it 4 times now, so that's 4 times. It's like all? Watching it once every Olympics, effectively. So I can't give it a hugely high repeat watch score. But that said, if this was on, I would sit and watch it if I stumbled across it, because it is something that immediately kind of grabs you. I'm sort of segueing into another score here, but I really enjoy it. So I'm going to give it a 3.75 rewatchability.
Wayne.
Awesome. It's a 3 for repeat viewing. Yeah, score for me. Because I've only seen it twice. And as I do agree with you, every time for the 2 times I sat down, I was riveted. However, I'm such a Nancy, I probably couldn't handle this much dark stuff over and over and over. So I say it's not especially rewatchable, but when you do watch it, you won't be sorry you spent that time.
Helen.
So I'm not sure how many times I definitely saw it at the cinema, and then have possibly maybe seen it since then. It's not going to be one that I'm going to watch regularly, but I did enjoy it, and enough time had passed that I'd vaguely forgotten what was going on, so it still kept me engaged. So I'm going to go 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, as I said in the recommendability, it's not something, if I think about watching, I'm not going to drop a hat and put it on, but I'm happy to keep on watching it. I think I like the Olympic cycle there, Paul. Every 4 years. So 3. I'm going to go for. Small screen score, Paul.
Yeah, this is probably the hardest one to score for me, because I think there is something to get out of watching this on the big screen. Maybe not sort of gravity levels of amazement.
I have something to say here, everyone. Paul has the world's biggest TV. I've never seen one anywhere near as big as this.
Not true.
It's huge, right? So for you, the small screen is still fucking huge.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to watch this on my phone, let's put it that way, but I would absolutely happily watch it as I did this week on my TV screen again, no problem at all. And so I'll go somewhere in the middle, and I'll give it a 3.5 on small screen.
Wayne.
4. I watched this on my 27-inch pussy screen, I guess you would call it, Paul. And it's it's fine. I actually like you said, Gravity, you probably need to be in a cinema. This one, I don't think so. Obviously it would help, but I did love watching it still, and I was still enthralled.
Helen?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I obviously enjoyed watching it at the cinema, and I'm pretty sure that Alfonso Cuarón would probably like you to watch it at the cinema as it was filmed as a film to be enjoyed on the big screen. But it's strangely quite comforting and enjoyable to watch on the small screen. I don't know if that's because everything is just so kind of compact and fit into the screen, and the one shots just really pull you in. But I think it really works on the small screen, and I didn't really notice any sort of marked difference. So I'm going to give it a 5 for small screen.
Oh wow! Ooh. I'm going to go 4.5 here. I think dystopian kind of set films can work really well on TV sizes, but I think one thing I'd like to see it would be like a Children Men TV series.
Yeah,
like a mini series one-off. And I think that would work really well in the kind of like True Detective type style. And that doesn't stop the feats of the long one shots. I mean, sure, the True Detective had amazing one shots in there as well.
Oh yeah,
and cinematography as well. So I think I've never seen it in cinema, but I don't think I'd need to watch it in the cinema. If there's a cinema in London called the Prince Charles, which shows old films.
All right. Yep.
And they kind of pull you in. If this was on the Prince Charles, I don't think I'd go in. But if they're doing like an Alfonso Cuarón marathon, then I definitely would sit through all the last 5 of his films. Looking forward to seeing this in there, but it wouldn't pull me into cinema by itself. So 4.5 engagement score. I reckon this one will be quite high. Paul?
Yeah, definitely for me. This film starts with literally a bang, and immediately you're pulled into it. And even the detail, like to show that it is in the future with sort of these screens over whatever part of London that they sort of pan around past, and there's so much information for it. Oh, what's this? And why is that? And why? I watched this with my fiance, and she was like, oh, but why are people in cages? I'm like, it'll all make sense. Just give it a chance. So she was intrigued. And so I got to see her watching it for the first time, which was...
That relationship is still solid, is it?
Yeah. Well, I did ask at the end of the film very pointedly, did you like it? She said, yes. I was like, good, we can still get married. She laughed, but I don't know how...
Yeah, it was that funny kind of laugh, yeah.
So she was enthralled and was like, often we'll start a movie together because we're watching one for the podcast, or I'm watching one for the podcast, and she'll go, and then she'll say, I'm going to bed, or I'm going to start playing around on my laptop. She did not turn away from the screen. So between her experience and mine, I'm giving it 4.9.
Ooh.
Wayne.
Nice one. I cannot fault any of the engagement of this. I watched this movie leaning forward in my seat for the whole time. I have many distractions in my little man cave here, and I didn't do any of them. I just watched the movie, so it's getting a perfect 5 for me.
Way.
Yeah, I can't fault it.
Helen.
Yeah, one thing I was got to say. So there's a bit where Clive Owen goes to see, I can't remember the actor's name, the guy who lives in what looks like the Battersea Power
Danny
Station.
Houston.
Yeah, that's it. But it's not. He actually drives into the Tate Modern, but it looks like he lives in Battersea Power Station. So there's
that's so big cool. Turbine hall in Tate Modern. Yeah.
But it's got like the towers and this whole Pink Floyd thing going on because he's got the pig and the Pink Floyd music.
What was that about?
It's so cool.
Okay, Pink Floyd. Thank you.
In the future, Pink Floyd's still cool and you can live inside there, which...
but it's still cool now, so I don't see why they wouldn't be cool in 15 years.
Who knows? A lot can happen in like a space of a year, Just anything could happen. So there's loads of things like that which are really interesting, and you're probably kind of, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss bits like that. And you do need to pay attention to know what's going on, because why wouldn't you? It'd just be pointless watching it. So yeah, I guess maybe even more, even though it was a rewatch for me, I was still really engaged. So a 5.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 5 of this as well. I got a young kid, so my TV film viewing is kind of cut him into segments as determined by his being asleep or awake. And this is one where, it kind of got stopped at multiple points, but each time I was like, can you just go to sleep again so I can put this back on again? And that doesn't always happen. So that's going to be a 5 for me. And that gives us an overall score of 4.25. 2188. Let down slightly by the repeat viewing score, which I think is fair, but that's higher than I thought it was going to be going into it.
Very nice.
Wow.
Let's head to Twitter, because we do, before we record, we go to Twitter and put a shout out. So the guys do listen to us, do follow us on Twitter. We are at Flixwatcher Pod, and put out tweets like this. In this case, saying we're reviewing Children of Men, #Children of Men, with Paul and Wayne from the Countdown PC. That's you guys. Have you seen it? Give your thoughts on the score out of 5 for an on-air shout out. And we had quite a big response for this. Paul, do you want to take the first one?
Sure thing. This is from Sam, who's a good mate of ours from the Movie Reviews and 20 Qs podcast. He said 5 out of 5, easily one of the best films of the past 20 years, beautifully shot, well acted, and absolutely outstanding from a technical perspective.
Nice. Helen?
So I'll take this one from Lee TB. Superb. When I first saw it 10 years ago, an interesting, cool, dystopian sci-fi fantasy. Utterly terrifying when I rewatched it recently, when the opening moments set out a future that looks familiar to me now. And then he's gone for 4 bits of dynamite.
A bit of dynamite. Paul?
From Steve from the Everything I Learned from Movies podcast, he said 5 stars. The one take in the SUV is classic, but the entire movie in general is an amazing feat of cinema.
Yeah, I do love that one take. And the last one, Helen?
Yep, Corey and Kevin talk about Nothing podcast, 5 stars. I love this movie. The choreographed scene of Clive Owen starting outside the building and working his way in was amazing. Strawberry cough. Got a cough to get off.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for giving your opinions on Twitter. Paul, Wayne, can you sign off by telling us where we can find you online and then say goodbye to our listeners?
Sure thing. You can find us on Twitter at the Countdown PC. As we've just mentioned, we host through podbean.com, so you can like and follow the show there. And you can check out our Australian home, which is ccradio.com.au. Thanks so much for having us on. It's been a real blast to share the mic with you both.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.